everybody a chance to file into the room here and take their seats, settle in with their coffee or tea.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, Juliet.
Juliet, welcome.
Hi.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Indeed. That's here. Saxi.
Hi, everyone.
Great. Good afternoon. Good morning, Jonathan, Allison. Wonderful. Well,
Happy Earth Day.
Yes, happy Earth Day. Thank you, Maria. Wonderful. Hey, Jackson.
Jackson.
All right. In the next generation of leadership.
In her first Earth Day.
There you go.
Happy Earth Day, everyone.
Happy Earth Day. We do the reactions. There we go. Well, wonderful. Oh, wow, Jonathan, you've raised the bar. We're all going to be following up with you on that one.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's go ahead and as others continue to join, maybe we'll go ahead and get started. Once again, good morning and good afternoon, maybe good evening for some folks. I don't know. But wherever you are and wherever you're joining from, I hope you're having a very happy Earth Day, whether you're beginning it in the middle of it or closing in on the wrap up of it. I'm Jesse Fripp. I'm the Secretariat Co-Lead of the CIFAR Alliance, and it is really a great privilege to welcome everyone and to have you all with us for this. I believe it's at least the third, if not the fourth, annual Earth Day Open Roundtable of the CIFAR Alliance. We've been doing this so long, it's just become this this tradition that we can't even keep track of how many times we've done it. But every time it gets better and bigger and more impactful, and we're grateful to have you with us. Please, I know a lot of us know each other well, but feel free to introduce yourself and your organization in the chat and let each other know where you're dialing in from. And of course, as we go along, if you have questions or comments or things you want to share, make good use of that chat as well as we always do. As we get started, it's my privilege to introduce both the agenda and our sort of keynote speaker who will be framing up the themes for our conversation together today. But as we reflect on the theme of today, I think especially today, and especially in this moment in time, we're reminded that the topic of climate resilience is not an abstract aspiration. It is a present and urgent necessity. It feels like it always has been, but it feels like every year that reality comes further to the fore. And the CIFAR Alliance is really born from and built around this sense of urgency and unified action, focused on driving an inclusive, innovation-led solutions that help vulnerable communities around the world, not only to survive, but to thrive through the climate transition we're experiencing. And today's agenda, maybe we can top that up. Nelly, I think, or Julian, whoever has control of that, really highlights what makes this table, this alliance, unique among others who are doing great work around the world. We'll be hearing, very importantly, from our frontline entrepreneurs who are working across Latin America and Africa on a range of nature-based and tech-enabled solutions. We'll be exploring climate venture financing through our soon-to-be relaunched Climate Venture Collab. We'll be examining some terrific new toolkits for locally led adaptation presented by our colleagues from Microsave Consulting. And of course, as always, we'll be digging into the persistent challenges of bridging the funding gap between innovation and scale, and between promise and delivery of those outcomes we're looking for. I'm not sure if anyone can see the agenda yet. Anyone can see that? Is the agenda missing in
share
action?
in 1 second.
Okay, no worries.
Nadia,
I'll keep
I will
talking
share.
along.
Yes.
All
Let
right.
me
Thanks,
and
Lydia.
I'm sorry. Let me make
There
it
we go.
presentation mode.
Voila.
Voila. Here we go. There we go.
Thank you. So that's our agenda. We see we have a full hour and a half, and we will, as always, work hard to honor our commitment to respect your time, even while allowing opportunities for engagement and discussion. I do want to, before we kick off, want to note that this work, those of you, all of you know, takes a village, and I would particularly like to recognize the leadership of the Secretariat team, particularly my brilliant co-lead, Nelly Ramirez Moncada, who really is the energy and spirit and drive of the Secretariat, as well as Maria, who many of you know already, Julian Rodriguez, who is often very humbly behind the scenes, but making the wheels turn, and Grace Onyuka, who makes all this magic happen. And many others from the VFA global team who really drive this train forward. Especially, I want to welcome. It's a great privilege to welcome to their first sort of official appearance on this stage as co-chairs, our incoming co-chairs, the formidable team of Juliet Monroe of FSD Africa and Graham Wright of Microsafe Consulting. You'll be hearing from Juliet in just a moment. Their vision that they bring to this effort is not just strategic, it's deeply rooted in practitioner-led, community-led development and systems transformation, experience, expertise, and insights. Not least, we are very grateful for the foundational leadership of our past co-chairs as they pass the torch to the new generation of co-chair leadership and the next generation. Jackson Love is here from PayPal with his next generation of leadership joining us. And we also recognize David Dalcer of Atram AI, formerly of VFA Global, who is a co-chair emeritus. Both of these fine gentlemen really played instrumental roles in shaping the Alliance from its early stages. As our 2024 annual report reflects, which you'll get in the chat here shortly, CIFAR continues to grow, not just in numbers, but in reach and partnerships, and in its ability to mobilize capital, amplify frontline membership, and turn insight into action. And so without further ado, and to officially frame today's session, I am very happy to pass the mic to someone who embodies the spirit of purpose-driven finance and collaborative leadership. Please join me in welcoming Juliet Monroe, our co-chair and director of early stage finance at FSD Africa. Juliet, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. And that's a little bit too much of a drum roll for me. But anyway, really nice to see lots of familiar faces and lots of unfamiliar names as well. So you're all very welcome. So to those of you who don't know me, I'm Juliet, Director of Early Stage Finance, as Jesse mentioned, at FSD Africa, and we're one of the founding members of the CIFAR Alliance. So we've been with the CIFAR Alliance for a while. And again, thanks so much to the Secretariat and to Jackson and David for your earlier wisdom, which makes the lives of myself and also my fellow co-chair, who is here, Graham Wright, it makes our life much easier. And so it's really a real pleasure between Graham and myself to invite you and open today's Earth Day. The theme this year is Our Power, Our Planet, which is quite appropriate, with a focus on tripling clean energy by 2030, I read this morning. So as FSD Africa, we're really sort of interested in investing in catalytic interventions in Africa's financial systems to bring about shifts in the way finance is allocated for both people and our planet. And so through that, as Jesse mentioned, we sort of work a lot with organizations that are delivering finance to various innovators that are solving for all these different climate issues in Africa. And so through that, we get to see both the first-hand urgent need for these resilience building solutions. Again, as Jesse alluded to, the urgency of this across the African continent. Obviously, we're focused on Africa and not globally. But also we see, like you, I'm sure, the real opportunity that there is for these innovations bringing to people improvements in livelihoods, opening up new novel markets, economic opportunities and avenues, including in clean energy markets, of course, as per this year's theme, alongside the benefits to our planet. So it's not just about, it's about people and planet. And we think that there's a real opportunity here to recast development in a way where more inclusive and equitable benefits for humans can align with benefits for the environment and the other populations that we share our planet with, and that we're very much interdependent on. And this feels really important, I think, for us all to strive for, particularly in the current context. The Alliance was sort of founded on a simple but bold premise, and that's really to tackle the climate crisis, yes. We need a continuous flow of great ideas in order to do that, but we need more than that. We need deeper and more trust-based spaces and means of collaboration as organizations across the globe, where we as financiers, investors, innovators, researchers, regulators, and whoever else can together create differently, co-create differently, act together. And by doing so, we become more powerful. So again, our theme, our power, our planet. This premise feels even more relevant and important today than it did a year ago, I would say. I think our complex world seems to have gotten a whole lot more complex in the last few months. And with climate change, which we all invest in, is knowing that it's such a critical and urgent agenda, it seemingly has got pushed to the side instead of nationalistic self-interest, inequality and exclusion, which seems to be rising to the priority list. So I think within this growing complexity of the sort of geopolitical environment, spaces like this, like the Alliance, rooted in trust, feel even more than necessary. So we need to sort of come together and combine our power to fight back and keep climate high on the agenda. And that's exactly what the CIFAR Alliance is offering, really a trust-based collaborative platform where to date over 70 organisations have already come together in various ways since it was formed to test, fund and scale different inclusive, innovative solutions, and where a number of initiatives, I think some of us are familiar with them already, have been born and nurtured, and where knowledge, insights and learnings have been shared and tools developed. So the CIFAR Alliance doesn't just talk about systems change, it convenes the people building it and unlocks collaboration across sectors and geographies to help drive this sustainable and scalable impact that we're looking to achieve. And by so doing, the Alliance is helping to keep climate change and inclusion high on the agenda, and helping to build and maintain the metaphorical bridges that we need to achieve the real change. I think as FSD Africa, we believe that many of these early stage business innovations of today can and will become the change agents of the future. And it's through the collaborations that we can get amongst the members of the Alliance and beyond that we can create the right conditions for these businesses to thrive and grow and drive the outcomes that we're looking for. So as we kick off today's event, let's remember that CIFAR, including this roundtable, but beyond that, is a space where trust is currency and collaboration is our strategy. And so thanks very much to you all for showing up, and thanks for believing that transformation is possible when we can do it together. And once again, on behalf of Graham and myself, welcome everyone. Happy Earth Day. Our power as a collective force is strong, and long may it continue. So look forward to today's agenda. I'm going to hand back to Jesse. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. I love that is going to have to be emblazoned as our motto: trust is currency, collaboration is strategy. Thank you so much for setting up the tone for us. You'll find, just shifting gears, we're not going to take time to go through the annual report, but you will find it here in your, yes, it's dropped into the chat. Please take a look at that. That highlights, I think, what was certainly an exceptional year of momentum building from 2024 that sets the stage for our work together this year and the years to come as we continue to prove our agility in navigating the realities that Juliet very eloquently described that continue to challenge us to innovate more and collaborate even more deeply. I think next up, though, I would be very pleased to introduce Maria, who will be taking us into the realm of action with an exciting new announcement about a collab that's coming back full circle into action with the Alliance. Maria, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And thank you so much, Juliet, for setting the stage. And there's no better way to celebrate Earth Day than to announce the relaunch of the Investing in Climate Ventures collab. We want to begin with a big shout out to our colleagues that are going to be Alive Ventures. One of our newest members, you've probably had the pleasure of meeting Alan Pierce and Maria Pia Morante. They will be the ones representing Alive Ventures and participating in the collab, and Catalyst Fund with our own Maylis Carraro and Toyin Emmanuel Ulubaque. So the purpose of this relaunch and this collab and mentioning what Juliet was saying, we're living very complex time, and this growing complexity is affecting the funding landscape for climate ventures. So we see this collab as a platform that will help serve to mobilize more capital across the investment continuum, and being able to bring it to this innovative, promising climate ventures. We hope the collab also will serve to showcase investable innovation from emerging markets, providing clear proof points, showcasing opportunities and success stories from local innovators, and to help us bridge the gaps in capital by convening the most relevant actors in the ecosystem, sharing relevant insights, and especially connecting the offer of the capital investors with the demand, with these local innovators. I'm going to pass also the baton to Maylis Carraro, she will share a little bit of what was accomplished in the collab in the past, because we're picking up where we left, and we'll be sharing with you all very soon the roadmap with the colleagues, the roadmap and the plans for the collab, what we hope to accomplish, and we'll be coordinating our first collab meeting very soon. Maylis, if you want to.
Great. Thank you, Maria. And hi, everybody. Great to see so many familiar faces in the room. So it's great to be able to restart Hell's Venture Investing Collab for a couple of reasons. The collab really began as an experiment at the start. And when we started a few years ago, the ecosystem for climate innovations across emerging markets was very nascent. There weren't a lot of frameworks or ways of mapping and understanding the space, especially when we looked at climate resilience and adaptation, and of making sense of innovations that were investable, at what stage, by what kind of capital. So we really started as an effort to learn and map the ecosystem for investors that wanted to dive deeper, deploy more capital into this asset class, and perhaps even launching new vehicles, right, for climate resilience and adaptation specifically. So we wanted to better understand the space, map the opportunity, and learn together. As a result, initially we focused primarily on a few knowledge products. So we developed an investment brief. There's an I missing there, but it's I guess more difficult to pronounce that way for the speaker. So an investment brief, the opportunity in digital finance for climate resilience. So we really looked at the time at the intersection of fintech and climate. And that became a little bit of a white paper for this group. Then we developed a compendium of innovations because the question came, what do innovations in this space look like? What are we looking at? Is it primarily agriculture technology, or is it deep technologies for mitigation? Like what, or is it climate insurance? And we realized the space was vast and the opportunities abound across a number of subsectors. So we developed this compendium to shine a light on some of these innovations. And those were collated thanks to the members of the collab, who were all pretty much active investors. And then we also realized that everything that we learned needed to be shared with others, so not within the confines of the collab. So we developed a webinar series to showcase these entrepreneurs and the investors who dared to back them and took the risk. So we called that Climate Tech Unveiled, and we had 2 episodes, something that could be continued. And then finally, we also launched a community WhatsApp group specifically for Africa-focused climate investors, which could also be expanded globally. So since the time where this was launched, the space clearly has evolved. And that's why I think this is exciting. On the one hand, we've seen a lot more VCs, a lot more family offices, funders, LPs move to climate of an interesting climate. On the other, climate is becoming obviously a bad word, especially in the US, which poses the question of, how is capital going to flow into the space in the future? How much more can we try to catalyze? How much more can we channel towards entrepreneurs that don't have any or much of in emerging markets? And so I think it's even more relevant today that this is relaunching. And we're hoping that many more members will join. And as Maria said, we'll be focusing on unlocking more capital, strengthening investor coordination, ensuring that there are context-relevant climate solutions across these markets that can scale with the right capital at the right time. More details to be shared, but I'll stop here for now and say that my colleague Toyin, who's our Chief Investment Officer, will be taking the reins of this together with our partner Alive Ventures.
Hi, Toyin. Thank you, Maëlys. And over to Jesse or Nelly.
I think it's over to Nelly.
Nelly.
Thank you, everyone. Actually, this is only to hand over to our dearest co-chair, Graham, who will be introducing very interesting toolkits that Microsafe Consulting has developed over the past in the context of the collab. So over to you, Graham.
Thanks so much. And as you pull up the slides, let me thank my team who've worked on this. They've done a really outstanding job. We're going to start with a brief video, and then I will run through a couple of slides just to give you an idea of what's in the toolkits. Over to you, Nelly.
Play.
Oh, no sound.
No sound?
No sound. Now we're going to need a Zoom guru.
Maybe, I don't know, Grace, if you share, or I'm sharing my screen. Is it maybe because I'm wearing I'm sorry, I'm not very, let's see if I need to.
I can share my screen, Maria.
Thank you, Julian.
In a world where climate change touches empowering communities and businesses to adapt is not optional. It's essential. Yet, local voices are often excluded from decision-making, undermining their ability to build resilience and adapt effectively. To elevate the voices of those most affected by climate change, MSC has developed 2 participatory, locally led adaptation toolkits, tailored for 2 of the most vulnerable and interconnected groups in society: the LLA Community Toolkit and the LLA MSEMI Toolkit. The LLA Community Toolkit is designed to help vulnerable communities build resilience against climate change. Through 6 participatory tools, it enables them to assess the vulnerabilities of local communities to the impacts of climate hazards specific to their region, empower community members to identify shared climate risks and evaluate their collective vulnerability, support community members in developing a community adaptation plan to reduce their collective vulnerability to climate risks, identify the role of locally embedded entities in enabling communities to implement their CAPs. This toolkit promotes inclusive, locally driven adaptation by combining participatory methods and scientific data to build institutional and community resilience. The LLA MSEMI Toolkit is a 7-step journey tailored for enterprises. It includes supply-side assessment with financial service providers, mapping of hazards, identifying business vulnerabilities, and co-developing adaptation plans. Grounded in holistic supply chain mapping, whether it's operational feasibility or financial sustainability, this toolkit equips MSMEs to thrive in a changing world. These toolkits are not just concepts. They've been tested in real-world scenarios. The LLA Community Toolkit was piloted across 3 tribal majority regions in India, capturing diverse community perspectives on climate adaptation. Meanwhile, the LLA MSME Toolkit was field tested with micro, small, and medium enterprises and financial institutions in both India and Uganda, offering unique insights into linking financial services with climate resilience planning. 5 field tests, 2 toolkits, 1 clear message. Climate action works best when it's locally led. Join us in building a sustainable tomorrow. Explore the toolkits today.
Great. I don't think we want to go around 2. Thanks so much indeed. Once was probably enough. But let me again thank my teams who worked really hard on building these toolkits and then testing them. And thanks also to the folks from Finca who allowed us to test the MSME toolkit in Uganda. Next slide, please. So let me just talk a little bit about the principles on which these are built. So we've got the, I think, universally recognized and valued principles, 8 principles of locally led adaptation on the right-hand side. If you click now, please. And if you look at it, in addition to the vulnerable groups that are impacted by climate change, there are 3 key stakeholders: the local government, the financial service providers, and then civil society and corporates and the like. Together, this creates the sort of stakeholder ecosystem. Next, please. And so the traditional orthodox approach has been to look at all of those as a whole. And that makes a lot of sense, but is actually pushing the bounds of practicality for 2 reasons. One, running these type of exercises where you're trying to get the most vulnerable person in the community talking to local government and vice versa, that's a stretch, particularly for local government officials very often. And the second is that if you split them out into local government, MSMEs, and then the particularly vulnerable groups, you're much more likely to be able to get financing, leveraging existing climate funds rather than depend on grants, which is what locally led adaptation plans have traditionally gone to. So local government, FSD, Kenya has done some great work building investable projects for and with the county governments in Kenya. A growing number of inclusive financial service providers, the MFIs and banks of this world, are beginning to move towards financing climate adaptation. And so we wanted to disentangle those investable stakeholders from the overall community. Next slide, please. So the two toolkits, one, as I say, focused on the community as a whole, with those four stakeholders involved, but less focus on the financial service providers than we're going to see in the MSME toolkit. And this allows us to look at the community's vulnerabilities, the risks they share, and then build plans in response to that, and what the role of these four different stakeholders might look like. Next, please. So this basically uses 6 tools, which you will see replicated in the MSME toolkit as well. First, mapping the hazards, then looking at vulnerability and indeed capability using the DFID 5 livelihoods capitals framework. So, that's financial capital, physical capital, natural capital, social capital, and one other capital that I can't remember off the top of social capital. And looking at those both in terms of where the community is strong and where it is weaker, and then look at the climate risks. And so to use this toolkit requires a lot of background secondary research to really understand the nature of the risks that these different communities are facing. On the basis of that, then we work with the community to look at how to manage that risk in using the ACTA framework. So accept, control, transfer, or avoid. And then that allows us to work with the community to prioritize their long-term adaptation options and build a community adaptation plan. And what's interesting is that we're now working in India, for example, with the government of Madhya Pradesh to work this into local panchayat, local government action plans. And I think that if we can do this, we can elevate the voices of climate affected communities a lot more effectively. Next, please. So in the tribal areas, we did it in 3 different tribal areas. Some are affected by heat waves and drought, and others were affected by really excessive, intense rainfall. And in both cases, there were significant changes arising from health challenges, and also in the case of the erratic rainfall, we saw crop loss and reduced productivity. Now, then when we look at what they might do, tribal people are already extending the use of their medicinal plants for remedies, but ultimately they're going to need to supplement their mutual support that is so common amongst tribal areas with local government and CSO and ultimately financial organizations' inputs. Next, please. So just this is the very high-level overview of the community adaptation plan. If you look at the orange highlight, you can see the sort of thing where they identified a need to refurbish their water sources, and they identified the stakeholders, how much it will cost, and when they would like to start on doing that. And that's something that is actually already in progress. Next slide, please. So now we wanted to do this to really help financial service providers identify the climate risk in their portfolios, and also then to start responding to the needs of their climate affected communities. And of course, many of the borrowers of inclusive financial service providers are significantly affected by climate. So this toolkit, you will see that its steps are very similar, but it's designed and they're tweaked in order to enable MSMEs to understand and begin to climate-proof their businesses, to help the financial service providers assess and manage portfolio risk, and also begin to develop products that might be more useful for MSMEs affected by climate, and then also to look at the role that broader government and other actors might play. Next, please. So broadly, the same tools as we saw in the community toolkit, but preceded by an assessment of the FSP's realities and the impact on the portfolio. And this is something that we've been doing a lot of work in Bangladesh, and also we did some in Uganda on this. And I think that it's going to become really more and more important that we understand how FSPs are being affected by climate change, because it's frog in water stuff. It sort of creeps up on them slowly, and if they're not paying attention, then I think there will be significant problems moving forward. Next, please. So you can see that in work that we did with Finca, where 41% of their clients are sitting in climate-sensitive supply chains. And these MSMEs are talking about prolonged droughts and delayed rainfall, as well as rising temperatures. And this then affects what is a lot of agricultural activity. And you can see on the right-hand column some of the proposed adaptations. And if we go to the next slide, please, you can see highlighted here, the top couple are things that the proprietors and their suppliers can do. The next two surrounded in orange are the ones where you've got opportunities for the financial service providers to play a role in facilitating adaptation of their clients. And then obviously at the bottom, you've got the classic crop insurance, which would reduce risk not just for the MSMEs, but also for the financial service providers. And we're increasingly clear that blended finance options to support adaptation will need a strong parametric insurance component in order to reduce risk for the people lending for adaptation. So that's all, I think. Next slide. Yeah, so this is really just to give you, when you have the deck, you can click on these to see summaries of the toolkits and various other pieces that either MSC or our esteemed colleagues on the Elevating the Voices of Affected People collab have written. And with that, thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'd be delighted to take them, of course.
Thank you so much, Ram, and also recognize with Juliet the leadership of MicroSafe Consulting and you and the team in your participation in the CIFAR Alliance, co-leading these collabs, keeping them alive, growing them, creating a breakfast club, creating really and truly insightful and important knowledge products, and today sharing these toolkits with everyone. So very, very thankful, because in many ways, these collabs have kept the Alliance alive and thriving. So we're very proud to have you. And up next, we have our esteemed colleagues from GSMA, Leila Gucci and Guri Ramkumar. Thank you so much for joining us, great partners and members of the CIFAR Alliance. Leila is Senior Advocacy Manager at GSMA for Climate Tech, and Guri is Insights Manager for Climate Tech, also for GSMA, and they will be presenting to us today a truly interesting startup tool as well, navigating the voluntary carbon market, a guide for startups. And it is their launch, so very thankful they've chosen this day to launch, along with MicroSafe Consulting, these really important tools. And with no more further ado, over to you. I'm going to be, Julian, could you help us share the screen, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nelly. Yes, so my name is Leila Gucci. I'm the Senior Advocacy Manager for the Climate Tech Program at GSMA, as Nelly just mentioned. we sit at the Mobile for Development specifically. My colleague Gori and I will be talking about this project that we are launching, which is a guidance to the voluntary carbon market. But first, I want to give you a little bit of a context of who we are and what we do for those of you who are not familiar. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the GSMA is the Association for the Mobile Industry, and we have over 750 industry members, plus an additional 400 members in the wider mobile ecosystem. GSMA Mobile for Development is sort of the international development arm of GSMA, and we work with the use of digital technology for good. And we have several different programs that work with different topics, such as digital for humanitarian action, digital inclusion, agri-tech, and so on. And we're all funded by donors, and we work specifically with low and middle income countries. Next slide, please. So Gary and I sit in the Climate Tech program, where we tackle topics like climate finance, nature tech, the blue economy, the circular economy, and so on. And we do this by producing research and insights, but we also build partnerships and we advocate for our topics. And we also support startups with grant funding and capacity building through our GSMA Innovation Fund. Next slide, please. So like we mentioned, we have recently worked on a new project, which is a guidance to the voluntary carbon market, specifically focusing on startups in low and middle income countries. So I will hand over to my colleague Gauri to walk us through this, because she's led our work in this topic. Thank you for me.
Thanks, Lela, and thanks, Nelly, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. Happy Earth Day greetings. We at the GSMA are really, really excited to share our guide on the voluntary carbon markets for startups with all of you today. Please feel free to scan the QR code or use the link on the slide to access the guide. I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about how we decided to develop the guide and place it in the wider set of resources around the carbon market. Navigating the carbon market can be daunting for early stage startups. So our own conversations with our Innovation Fund grantees have pointed to an information gap for early stage startups. Many of them feel really ill-equipped to engage with the VCM. And this is because the VCM is fairly complex, and there are particularly three main pain points that stand out while trying to engage with the VCM. There is a lack of standardization, so there's no unified processes or centralized guidance for project development and accreditation. Project developers, secondly, must navigate multiple and a complex web of stakeholders throughout the project cycle, and they need to be on top of an evolving market. So there's shifting regulations nationally and internationally. There's evolving requirements around credit integrity and project development. And additionally, in this context, there's a lack of clear guidance on how to navigate the voluntary carbon market. So to address this particular need, we set out to create an online guide with accessible and tailored information that has been designed in a way to empower startups to evaluate on their own their potential of entering the voluntary carbon market. Next slide, please. I would like to now briefly introduce the guide and how it's structured. It has three main sections: understanding the VCM, assessing your project, and case studies. The first section, understanding the voluntary carbon market, basically covers the fundamental concepts behind the market. It explains how it's structured. It also answers project level frequently asked questions. It maps out key players within the ecosystem and also their roles with respect to each other, as you can see in the slide shown here. Next slide, please. The second section of the guide, which is sort of the meatier portion of the guide, provides a step-to-step guidance for startups wanting to explore project development. So it offers an overview of what is required at each stage of the process. For this, we've developed a four-step framework. The first step takes you through the three main components. Can the project clearly demonstrate additionality? Does the project align with the methodology? Is there a risk of double counting? Those are the kind of things that the check the project eligibility section deals with. The second step, evaluate financial viability, helps you assess the potential financial implications of pursuing a carbon project. So this is exciting. This is tied to an exciting tool. Could you just click next, please? Yes, so the carbon credits break-even calculator, which I will get into a minute. The third step is defining go-to-market strategy. So having established that your project is eligible to generate carbon credits, and you've also checked out the project's financial viability, you now need to start thinking of how to get the projects off the ground and how to get the credits into the market. So this is what the third step covers. And finally, at this point, if you've decided to enter the VCM, good luck. And this is the final section. It's called the implementation roadmap. We will walk you through the key steps that you need to take through two distinct route to markets, established and emerging. So this is a classification that we've made, where established standards are just main registries that within the voluntary carbon markets. These are registries we've all heard of, like PERA, Gold Standard, American Carbon Registry, Climate Action Reserve. And whereas emerging standards, on the other hand, are new players who have entered the voluntary carbon market. They look to provide alternative routes to generating and issuing credits, and they usually leverage new technologies to do so. So some of the examples of emerging standards include Carbon Clear, CAVEX, and Puro.earth. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, a key feature of the second section, Assess Your Project, is the carbon credits break-even calculator. The calculator helps determine the range of carbon credits required for any particular project to break even. That is to recoup its project development cost. And it is fairly easy to use. All you need to provide is 4 pieces of information related to your project. So you start with the type of VCM project you're interested in. The choices are nested under 2 sectors, household and community devices and waste management. And they instead have, inside that there are 6 subsectors, and we've had a selection process to arrive at the subsectors. So in selection of these subsectors, we wanted to ensure that the portfolio of themes is diverse. We have a range of technologies and co-benefits that we can represent. And then next, we also wanted to pick categories where there are sufficient data from project issuances under any category. And finally, we also wanted to check if that particular theme or subsector had sufficient data to inform calculations like the number of credits generated from business activities. So once you've selected your project type, your project subsector, then you input the number of units you plan to sell and the lifespan of that technology. And this is where the route to markets that I explained earlier become super relevant. So the results of the calculator are divided based on the route to market you intend to pursue, that is the established or emerging. And so now with these 4 inputs, you can calculate the break-even volumes. Next slide, please. So let's take an example here. I've chosen a solar lighting subsector, and let's assume that we plan to sell 35,000 units of solar lighting solutions, and they all have an average lifespan of 10 years. Within the established market route, based on the information that we've entered, the calculator estimates that to break even in cash terms over the course of your project, you would need to sell at least 9,000 under a high market price scenario. Can you click next, please? Yes. Or if it's under a low market price scenario, you need to be able to sell 25,000 of these units. Can you also click next, please? Yes. And given that we had given out our input of 35,000 units, this analysis suggests that it is likely that we will break even in cash terms over the course of the project. Next slide, please. Thank you. So with the same case, if you're choosing an emerging route to market, what it means is that the enterprise is likely to break even at the get-go, which is that the platform is assumed to, because the platform assumes that you're charging on a revenue share basis. The data presented in this graph are based on the assumption that credits generated are generally sold at a premium of 26 euros, and the platform takes around 30% of the share of the revenues. And these terms are very similar to what is offered in the market by some of the players. So in reviewing these information presented here, one thing that the user should take into consideration is that Many emerging platforms are relatively new to the market, so it cannot be assumed that all credits generated would be bought or a premium price on it can be fetched. Having said that, we also are looking to expand the categories that we offer in the toolkit based on the engagement and feedback we get on the tool. So really excited to see how that shapes up over time. Next slide, please. Yes. Could you click on one more and the other? Yes. So the third section features the best practices and case studies in the guide across 3 sectors: clean cooking, solar home systems, and sanitation. And the section takes one through the journey of how ATEC in clean cooking, NG Energy Access, and Sanergy in sanitation have navigated successfully the voluntary carbon market and what their journey looks like. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to conclude by sharing some of the key insights we've gained in the process of developing this guide. Firstly, despite the recent scrutiny and concerns around the voluntary carbon markets, there is still a very strong appetite for credits, and credits remain an important prospect for climate tech startups to bring in climate finance. And this is due to several reasons. Firstly, the importance of voluntary carbon markets is also highlighted by the fact that the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, PACM, and other carbon crediting programs, including the voluntary carbon markets, will coexist, and they'll increasingly have aligned requirements, which means there's a sort of enablement of convergence between the voluntary and compliance market. Secondly, regulations around Article 6 and the new integrity framework developments that are happening are also building an environment of trust around the voluntary carbon market, and inadvertently is bringing a lot of goodwill around it. It is also important to note of the role of the VCM in the broader climate finance ecosystem. For example, a strong DMRV system isn't just about carbon credits. It's also a pillar for bringing credibility to all sorts of climate investments. The second insight we wanted to offer was on digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, and how it offers an opportunity to decrease your monitoring costs through automation using technologies such as Internet of Things, embedded sensors in products or satellite imagery or digital payment records. And I can't highlight enough how this provides transparency and credibility to a project cycle. For example, GSMA grantee ATEC measures electric cookstoves usage digitally, and therefore it provides one of the most accurate credits in the clean cooking space. And the third and fourth points are on the opportunities that established and emerging standards provide. For a typical project cycle of 4 to 5 years within the established standard, you are looking at a cash expenditure of anywhere between $100,000 to $240,000. And a large proportion of this cash expenditure is upfront, and we've also seen that roughly around 10,000 tons is the usual minimum viable size to break even, which then means that a lot of smaller projects get logged out of the market. And this is where emerging digital first standards come into play. They offer new routes to market. Platforms like Cavex, Carbon Clear operate on a revenue share model, as I explained earlier. And also through this use of technology, they're able to decrease some of the costs involved in the project development process. So making the entry to the VCM a viable option for several stakeholders who might have gotten logged out had they tried to engage with the established standards. Next slide, please. So this concludes our presentation. Please take a look at our website, play around with the break-even calculator. Feel free to reach out with your comments and feedback. We are really excited to engage with all of you on this. I shall also share a link in the chat for your reference. I also want this opportunity to express my gratitude to be able to share and launch this guide in presence of such exciting initiatives and innovations. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. This was truly interesting, and we're also going to be sharing the recording afterwards. So I think we are going to reach an even broader audience with this very interesting toolkit. So now, before we go on to our next item in the agenda, we wanted to leave a few minutes in case anyone from the audience had any questions to these toolkits, to the presenters, both GSMA and MicroSafe Consulting, for Juliet. If you had any comments or remarks that you wanted to share, also feel free to do it in the chat, but just we wanted to make sure that we're leaving some room to hear from the audience. Okay. So we do have, but before we go on to our agenda, and before we hit the first hour of our 1 hour and a half session, we have the traditional CIFAR picture. So if you can and are able to put your cameras on, this is for our social media to see your smiling faces, and that's what this community is about. Hey, Nidhi. So on 1, 2, it's 4 pages, so it's gonna be a long smile. On 1, 2, 3. And page 2, 1, 2, 3. Some of you are repeated in both pages. I don't know what happened there, but
Our smiles
so
are
happy
too
to see all
bright.
of you. Yes, yes, so happy to see you all. So up next, and our final item in the agenda is a panel of innovators, because in the end, those working on the ground and solving the actual problems on the ground are what inspires us and moves us. So as we celebrate Earth Day today, we had a very special program launching our climate venture investment collab, introducing the new climate toolkit, and towards the end, spotlighting remarkable entrepreneurs from Latin America and Africa. So thank you all who have joined us. We have 75 people registered today who will be getting the recording and the minutes from Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the US. And Europe. So very, very proud to be part of this community where trust is the main currency, as our dear co-chair Julia was mentioning towards the opening. So now I'm very honored to introduce our exceptional panel of innovators, starting with Elena Karisova from Trazos 3D, and she's also a fellow from our Teca Mexico program for early stage climate ventures. And Elena with Trazos 3D converts sargassum into ceramic artificial reefs using 3D printing, creating underwater tourist routes to support reef conservation and reduce coastal erosion. Our second innovator is Nolangla Molongo from Kwesi Innovations, and she's also from Teca Africa, from our early venture program in Africa, and creates biodegradable products like sanitizer gloves to reduce everyday plastic use. And joining our entrepreneurs is Cristina Martinez from Alive Ventures, who's also one of our co-leads for the Climate Investor Collab that Maria introduced earlier in the call. And they invest in early stage startups in Latin America, tackling poverty and inequality through tech and innovation. And Cristina will be sharing some of their learnings and investors and highlighting one of their key innovators as well. So to all of you, thank you so much for joining us, for being so brave and for inspiring us. And to begin, we would really would like to know and learn, why is your innovation key for climate innovation? We're going to start with Nolangla, and please correct me with your name, and Elena. And why is your innovation key, and what is the key impact that is driving? Do you want to start, Elena?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Elena Karitova, co-founder of Trazos 3D. And regarding the key innovation for climate adaptation for our regions, I just wanted to share a little bit what's happening in our region. So climate change is impacting all of the world, but in our coast, it's silent but relentless. What's happening in the Caribbean side of Mexico? We have rising ocean temperature. We have the death of the Mesoamerican reef. It's the second largest after the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. So this reef that indirectly contributes to coastal erosion. So also all this is exacerbated by the sargassum issue, which is another climate change story. So this is already visible in the Caribbean side of Mexico. As coastal erosion, we have a coastal erosion rate of around 1 meter per year, which is threatening around 4 billion USD in infrastructure just in Playa del Carmen region. So this is what's happening in a nutshell in my region. So at Traces Treaty, we understand the interconnection of climate change, coral reefs, and this is why we do not want to contribute to climate change. We developed a carbon negative material that directly mitigates the carbon from seaweed, the sargassum seaweed that's arriving, and we transform this sargassum into a ceramic material for 3D printed blocks for coral reef restoration. So the key is not only making this carbon negative technology for coral reef restoration, which it has a better survival rate, 85% than other conventional reef materials, but the key is that we know where to locate them, because we have developed a technology that could help us to precisely model the coastal erosion of the area. We know how to create a digital twin of the ocean, of this ocean section that we want to restore, and we can identify where to place exactly and in what configuration so that we can minimize the coastal erosion rate, and we could maximize the protection against wave impact, because we have modeled the project using databases. We've projected that in this Playa del Carmen area, there would be extreme events and extreme waves with wave heights of up to 10 meters, which would be very impactful and destructive for the region. So thinking forward, we have thought about this, and not only we're restoring coral reefs, but we're trying to tackle everything that indirectly is affected because of the coral reef death.
Thank you, Elena. And over to you, Nolangla.
Hi everyone, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, perfectly.
Great stuff. My name is Nonhlanhla Mhlongo from South Africa. I'm a founder of a startup called Quasi Innovations, and we are working on innovation that promotes green living. So just to answer your question, I feel like environmental justice is also health justice. So the background about how Quasi Innovation was born, it was during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And I used to work as a teacher, and I realized that this hand sanitizing of the hands, the desk every 5 minutes was taking so much of the teaching and the learning time. So how about we develop something that was going to last for an hour while it's actually helping both the humans and the planet? So that's when I came up with an idea to develop a biodegradable 2-in-1 hand glove sanitizer that you apply in your hands, and it stays effective for an hour. The glove is peelable and it dissolves in water within a few minutes, leaving no waste behind. So why do I feel like this is still relevant? It's because it's going to cap the high number of waste that we are generating, since latex gloves are still being used and hand sanitizer are still being used, and also to avoid future pandemics. Thank you.
Thank you, Nolanga. And before we go back to your entrepreneurs, to your innovations, and with a more systemic view from Christina as an investor, what kind of innovations are you also seeing in the space that you think are worth highlighting and are causing an impact?
I think.
Oh.
Was it meant for me or for Nanda?
For you, Christina, as an investor in the space.
Yeah, perfect. No, well, first of all, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here today. We actually wanted to talk about GoodSun. That's an innovation in which we invested last year, and we're quite actively supporting. And GoodSun, for those who don't know the company, it's an American company that is actually trying to redefine the food supply chain through not only a regenerative but also inclusive and sustainable approach. The company is directly working with smallholder farmers across Latin America and Africa, mainly in Colombia, Peru, Kenya, and Ghana. And they are promoting regenerative agriculture practices that sequester carbon but also restore soil biodiversity and improve rural livelihoods. The company does not have like a very innovative technology per se, but what we identify in a life as innovative business model the company has built They source, process, and distribute products from smallholder farmers with a direct trade model. They cut out intermediaries, increase transparency, and boost farmers' income. And then we also found quite innovative the whole strategy they have developed, and that's focused on placing the farmer at the center of their business model, and trying to build a resilient, transparent, and equitable supply chain that empower farmers. So they have three different pillars that are interconnected in the sustainability strategy, really related to climate adaptation, and what we believe is the key innovation for in the region. The first one is, as I said before, farmer empowerment. So the company invests in long-term development for the farmers. They provide access to knowledge, to tools, and to technology as well, so that they can support community-led circular economy initiatives. Then the second one is traceability and transparency. They believe that having a comprehensive tracking system that can relate the product to where it's coming from, and also increase accountability and trust, and build trust on the whole supply network. And then the third pillar is regenerative agriculture, as I was mentioning before. They are promoting climate smart practices such as agroforestry, cover cropping, soil restoration, that helps to heal the ecosystem, and that's also focused on soil health, biodiversity, and the whole climate resilience approach. So that's why overall we believe in this case, this goods and investment is an example of an adaptive, scalable, and long-term impact model that supports climate solutions.
Thank you, Cristina. And going back to the innovators, and maybe we rounded with Cristina's remarks, who have invested in several of startups aside from the ones mentioned. Where do you see, like in the current context, where do you see maybe Nolanda, you could lead the conversation here. Where do you see the challenges and the opportunities? So there was a particular context, there was a problem that you saw, and you figured out the technology, the team, and the solution, or a potential solution to this problem that hopefully it's scalable. And in your journey as a startup, and putting it together, and raising investment, and going also through an acceleration program as TECA, where what have been like the biggest learnings and challenges that you are seeing as the context changes, and where you are today?
I think at first, or prior to the TECA program, you'll just pitch and say you are looking for this kind of amount of money to do 1, 2, 3, 4. But you find out that when you get that first grant, you actually do not have knowledge on how to utilize those funds and stuff like that. So I think when I started to work with TECA, to become a TECA company, they provided us with the tools to learn about all other development within a business, because as a founder, I was more focused on the idea and on how to articulate my problem and my solution. And I kind of struggle to wear all the hats when it comes to the finances, the development, and other things that were actually needed my attention within the company. So I think I encountered a lot of challenges when it came to understanding the finances. And when I first received my first grant, I didn't know anything about SARS, where I need to pay tax and stuff like that. So everything was all over the place, and I didn't have a mentor, and I didn't have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I didn't have the knowledge that I actually needed to have those things, because I felt like, okay, I have this idea, I can just shoot and get from point A to point B. But when I became a TECA fellow, I learned about other things that were more important, and I knew how to articulate my ask, as in I'm looking for an expert who can do 1, 2, 3, 4 within the business, not necessarily asking for funds to come back and waste another time hiring someone who's going to do that specific thing. So I think it's also to have your mindset being shifted according to your goals, your aspiration, and what you want to achieve, and not necessarily having this idea of having money that you cannot utilize. And when it reaches your bank account, you have a lot of taxes that you need to pay for, or that and that and that. And hiring as well was also my challenge, because you hire cheap, and I learned the hard way that cheap is very expensive. Then you hire someone that cannot do that specific thing, and then you need to hire again. So I think I've gained a lot of experience and knowledge, and And right now I can actually tell people what exactly traction means within the space of time I was with Teka. So those were the challenges that I encountered. And I would say the opportunities are that you just need to start with the resources that you have, ask for help, attend these conferences, speak to people, tell them what you do, tell them that you're struggling with certain things, because I feel like we meet someone and they're like, oh, I've done this and this and this and this. And then you feel like, okay, I'm not doing anything, only to realize that they're not actually talking about their failures and things that they're struggling with. And when you start articulating those things, people are like, oh, so you struggle with that? Like, yeah. Why are you not struggling with that? So I think those are the opportunities to speak to people, to network with people, to reach out when you're struggling about something, because help is there, funding is there. You just need to have that right, even the team as well. I had a very messed up team, of which now I feel like it's doing the things. So yeah, it's a journey. It's been a lonely journey, but right now I feel like getting there somehow.
You're getting there. You're getting there. And what about you, Elena, as an early stage startup in the climate space? What do you think are the main challenges for startups like you, for innovators like you, and what are the opportunities as well?
Yeah, so I think the more we dive into coral reef restoration, the more challenges we find on the way. And I can summarize it in three main challenges. The first one, probably is our biggest one, is the biggest challenge is to scale fast enough so that we can tackle the coral reef restoration. So we're racing basically against time with climate change, which is very pressing. Probably the second one is that there is a lot of ignorance, at least in the coral reef restoration aspect, that the relationship of coral reef restoration and coastal erosion is usually unknown by hotel owners, by government agencies. So it's often overlooked, this connection. People do not know that healthy coral reefs are natural breakwaters, and this is why sometimes it's not prioritized, this type of restoration. So there are no grants, there are no funds, at least in Mexico, for this to do this. So we just see the degraded coral reefs, and that once absorbed 97% of the wave energy, and now we're losing this. So that's the second challenge. And the third challenge is there's plenty of opportunities and plenty of we need to build awareness to change the policies, the frameworks, the financial support system for startups like us. And I agree with Nolanda that Teka was very supportive in this aspect, because they helped us to figure out a business model in this challenging baseline at which we started doing coral reef restoration, with practically no financial support from grants, from public means, and Teka was supporting to help us develop this solid business model in which we could make an economically sustainable business without depending on grants or B2G contracts. So I think this type of actions helping figure out and this basic and very needed part of a business is what Teka is doing. So it's allowing innovative solution like ours to have a chance.
Thank you. This is really really telling about this, how these early stage or the early stage startups acceleration and investment programs are so necessary, and really gives validation and purpose to what we're pursuing, us and GSMA and Climate Collective and Alive and many others, Catalyst Fund, many others who are acting in this space. And I wonder, Christina, are some of these challenges that the entrepreneurs are mentioning something that you've also seen consistent with what we're seeing in the startups that you guys are investing in, and the ones that you highlighted at the beginning?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think all the challenges that were already mentioned, we've seen them in our portfolio startups. I was just gonna summarize the main challenges that we're seeing in the space as lack of access. And this lack of access can be lack of access to financing, first of all. I would say there's a lot of funding now going into climate solutions, but our view is that this funding needs to be adapted to the specific needs of the entrepreneurs and the different needs that these innovations need. And that's something we're really seeing, lack of access to financing. Lack of access to technical assistance. I think both of them mentioned that it's not just about accessing the funding, but also accessing the technical assistance that supports their business growth and the different needs they have across the development. And then the third one would be lack of access to markets. We've seen this specifically in Latin America, that many times different solutions miss this access to markets and markets that recognize the value added these regenerative solutions or other kind of climate solutions bring to the consumer.
Thank you, Christina. And would you highlight any opportunities that you're also seeing in this space?
Sure. We need to end on a positive note. In terms of opportunities, we do believe that Latin America has a very biodiverse ecosystem, and there's a lot of technical knowledge and technology going into the ecosystem. So we do think there's going to be great opportunities from the entrepreneurships and from the different startups coming on the coming years. And we also see a lot of consumers and investors trying to acknowledge this long-term impact and trying to go and appreciate into these new trends and climate solutions. So we do think there's a growing interest there, and that the market is going towards there. It's probably just going to take time.
Thank you, Christina. And to end our panel, I would ask both the entrepreneurs and Christina, considering these challenges but also the opportunities and what you're seeing in the market and how you have changed and evolved from where you started to where you are today. What would be a call for action, a call for our audience here when you think of the CIFAR Alliance, we have think tanks, we have community builders, we have investors, we have ecosystem growers, we call them, we have the consultants, we have policy, and what is it when we think of early stage startups aside from funding, or what more, or what kind of support could this type of network or investors in general or anyone within the climate space be valuable to you or could help you solve some of the challenges that you're facing? If you want to start, Elena.
Yeah, so I think the call of action I would really like to share with you is that we really must stop approaching coastal protection as we do not know the causes and think that we have time to prioritize this later because we do not have much time. And for my colleagues, I think we need to move beyond assessment and pilot projects, and we must start acting more decisively, more in a bolder way, because we have enough data already from satellites, from other means that we need to act, and we need to redirect our expertise towards implementation at scale. I think that's important to highlight. For governmental allies, I think we just need to make this happen. We need to prioritize this. For investors, climate adaptation in coastal zones specifically isn't just investing. I think it's an essential risk management that we must start to tackle. And we need to start doing this immediately in a coordinated way, in a coordinated action that matches this level of crisis. And I know that we have the solution already. We have the solution as, sometimes as small startups that we just lack the collective will sometimes to deploy this in the necessary scale and speed, which is the most important thing, to do it with great speed.
Thank you, Elena. What about for you, Nolana?
Okay, I think for me, for other fellow innovators that are here, I would say do not wait for perfect conditions. Just start with what you have and grow from there. And then for the funders, I would say that they should keep on supporting women-led startups, because we are not only responding to climate crisis, we are also reshaping the world to have, like, to think differently about health, safety, and sustainability. And also to keep on support. Like, I feel like the most important thing that has moved me from point A to point B is the non-monetary support that I've received. Like, I mean, the mentorship. I had a mentor with Teka that actually helped me draft something like an analysis or a mind map on how I should use the user research that I got to approach the pharmacies and how I should do that, the route on how to structure, and also taught me how to make sure that everything is on paper, is signed by both parties, of which was not on my head. I was just going to get there, shoot my ideas, send my products. But, you know, she told me about all the regulations around those things. So I feel like the assistant that we need as well is the knowledge, someone who's going to walk us through, someone who's been in this path, who's going to tell you, okay, do 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, just to maneuver is a problem. And it's very lonely. And sometimes you go on LinkedIn and these people are doing these massive things and you're like, I'm just in South Africa doing actually nothing. So I feel like if you have that mentorship around you, the support scheme, or anything around those lines, someone who can just help you, put you on the right path, help you with your mindset, know what you want, know who are you, the problem you are solving, why are you solving it, and who are you solving it for? Because sometimes those things are just in our head, that you are solving a problem only to find out that it's not even a problem for those people you are solving it for. So I say mentorship and other assistance that we can be provided to be put on the right path.
Thank you. And before I hand it over to Christina for closing remarks, what was that moment where I think would leave close with an inspiring note for all of us here, learning from you and learning from your innovations and what you're doing on the ground? What was that moment where you said, wow, this, I should really continue this, you know, because being an entrepreneur is very hard and you go from very highs and very lows and you kind of lost them and you find track again and then lost again. And a lot of battles in terms of access, like Christina was mentioning. But what was that moment that you said, wow, this really makes a difference. This really causes an impact and it can make a difference to solve the problems that I care about. Do you have any anecdote or do you recall that moment where you thought of this or where you felt that this was really going to be very impactful? You want to start, Elena, with the easy question?
Yeah, I think when we see vulnerable coastal communities, when we see the damage being done, especially underwater, because something as the death of coral reefs is not usually seen by people, is usually seen by divers, maybe snorkelers in the best case, but it's usually, 90% of the people do not see this. So when you start looking at this, death coral reefs, it impacts you actually. It impacts you very, very much, and you start thinking, okay, well, I'm from a scientific background. What can I do from a scientific perspective to tackle this? And you start thinking, okay, what key pieces from my background, from the background of my colleagues, from my network could be helpful to start building a solution for this, because this has to be solved. Because once you understand that coral reefs impact coastal erosion impact jobs and infrastructure and the whole touristic community and the GDP of the region, you start worrying about this. So I think it was a way to do something and to try at least to do something. And yeah, I think it's very, very gratifying to at least feel that you are trying to contribute. Of course, you will see a lot of obstacles, maybe most of them in form of ignorance, and that's one of another opportunity that we have to teach the young generation, to teach kids in schools about the importance of this, because it will be easier for innovators in the future in our place to implement something like this if the kids nowadays would be able to understand the issues that are happening. Because if nobody's talking about them, if nobody's sharing these stories, it hardly it will be prioritized later.
Thank you. And for you, what was the moment for Kawesi? What was that moment?
I think for me is when we first got our first MVP and we attended a conference last year, the Science Forum South Africa, that was happening last year, where we first did our user testing. So the reaction that we got from the people, and we also got like 2 scientists who were like very interested in what we were working on, of which one of them we are actually right now about to start working with her. So getting that feedback from people who have like the science background behind them, thinking that this is a good idea, it's something that they could like to be part of, was just like a milestone for us to know that, okay, fine, what we are doing is valid and it's something that people would actually use when it comes to the market.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, both very inspiring, and Christina, to close us up in this panel, what would you say are those impactful moments or that you've seen with the startups that you guys have invested in, and what would be your call to action to your other fellow investors and members of this community, this climate action community?
Sure. Let me start with the call to action, and then I would say, on one side, at the institutional side for investors, networks, and all the policy initiatives, I would say try to adapt the different frameworks to the needs of the specific regions and the needs of the entrepreneurs. And then my call to action for the entrepreneurs would be try to do your due diligence as well on what kind of investor or what kind of support you need, and if that's specifically adapted to your needs, because in the end there's going to be a lot of investors, but they might not end up suiting your specific needs. So that I think it's quite important also for the entrepreneurs. And yeah, definitely our moments would be through the startups, right? When you realize that one of your portfolio startups has achieved a strong milestone, they're expanding to new country, they're launching new product, they're reaching specific number of smallholder farmers and doing specific project with them. That's helping to build resilience. Those are our most impactful moments for sure.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you to our dear panelists today, because you guys really embody what Earth Day is about and really brings climate action to something that is very concrete and that we can all be a part of. So very proud and thankful for having you joining us today at the CIFAR Alliance. And with those words, over to you, Mr. Fripp.
Thank you, Deli, and yeah, terrific. Really grateful to have the entrepreneurs that are out front finding solutions and putting them into action. I mean, that's what this gathering is all about. And on that note, we'll wind it down and let you all get back to doing that important work wherever you are in the world. We would remind and invite you all who might be attending the DC Climate Week next week. And it's an interesting moment and environment to be having these conversations, but it's probably even more important than ever that we are, and we'll be delighted to be there in force. Please join us if you're in the neighborhood, and if you're not able to be in the neighborhood for a DC Climate Week, we're looking ahead to London Climate Week shortly thereafter. You see all the climate weeks that are going through. I'm burning through this, so thanks, Julian. So if you're able to be in London in June, would love to see you there. Please stay in touch, get involved. You've seen the collabs. If you want to learn more about TECA and the entrepreneurs, such as the incredible innovators we heard from today, make sure to reach out to Tyler or the TECA team members. Tyler's here and has been dropped in the chat. We'll be following up with recording and minutes of this. Please, a lot of information has been shared in the chats as well as in the document itself. Follow us on LinkedIn, and let's continue to build that currency of trust that I think we've felt and heard and seen throughout this morning's session, and accelerate that strategy of collaboration that Juliet, I think you challenged and inspired us to do as we kicked off. So I don't know if our co-chairs had anything else to say in closing. I would invite Graham and Juliet if so.
Graham.
Juliet, I'm sure they've had enough of me already.
Yeah, no, I think you said it all, Jess. Jessie, I think it was a really good agenda, sort of bringing out both some of the sort of learnings and toolkits and things that we can use to apply for our work, but also I think just hearing it from the innovators themselves. So thanks so much for that panel, Nelly, and participants. Just, that really sort of brings it home how important it is to kind of listen to from the ground up how you go about sort of actually innovating and making these businesses work, and how we as ecosystem builders and financiers really need to come to the table and support these businesses, because that's where the scale is going to happen eventually, and some of these issues are going to be solved. So thanks very much for coming. It's great turnout for the round table. It's been really good to have many organizations coming and listening in. And also great to have the Investing Collab rejuvenated as well. So to see.
Here. Yeah. Thank you, Juliet. Nelly?
We'll share the recording, the deck, and the minutes, and hope to see you all in the upcoming Open Roundtable in the next 3 months.
Yes. Thank you all, and have a wonderful Earth Day.
Many thanks all. Bye
Yeah.
now.
Happy Earth Day. Happy Earth Day.